All right, we're going to be using some Barron cards here to explore cumulative frequency graphs. So you'll notice we're using free response 75. I believe this is from the second edition, but I love this question, so that's why we're using it. All right, so we're looking at a cumulative frequency plot for bowling scores during 1 week in league play, and we have several questions here to deal with. First one is asking me to interpret the context and meaning of a specific point, 125 and 0.2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my cumulative frequency graph, and 125 is going to represent my score, and 0.2 is going to represent my cumulative frequency or my percentile. So what does this tell me? What this tells me is that, if you notice, I got 20% of my data here. 20% of my data is going to be just below that 125. So it's not going to be equal to that 125. It's going to be just below. So how am I going to answer this question? I'm going to say that 20% of bowling scores are less than 125. I don't know specifically what they are because you'll notice that we're dealing with ranges here. We're dealing with ranges of 25. I don't know individual data points in here. All I know is that this represents a range of data. And I'm also noticing here that we didn't have any scores from 0 to 75. See how that line's really flat right here? It starts at 0 and it stays at 0. We don't start getting scores until we get to 75. And then we notice that we start accumulating scores a bit. So that's a good observation to hold on to here. Can you make an estimate for the number of scores below 150? Let's take a look. A couple ways I could approach this. I'm looking at my score of 150. So I'm going to go up to here. And hey, I'm at about 40%. So they're asking me, can I make an estimate for a number of scores below 150? I can't, because I don't know the total number of scores here. They don't tell me that anywhere. A cumulative frequency chart only gives me percentages. It doesn't give me exact values. So the way I'm going to answer this question is, no, I don't know the exact number of bowlers, or no number of scores, excuse me. No. The number of scores, but I know 40% of all scores are less than 150. So I'm covering myself here because they don't specifically say they're looking for a specific number. I can't make an estimate for the number of scores, but I do know that's 40%. So, I'm going to go with that. I like that. So I don't know the number of scores, but I think 40%, I think that's good. All right. What is the median score? Now, this is what I like about these. I got to find 50% here for my cumulative frequency, or 0.5 would be right about here. I can just draw a line straight across. And that crosses my data line here at 175. So I can make I know the median score. It's 175. I love using these to find quartiles too. I always share that with students. I think it's a great way to find quartiles. If I wanted to find like the first quartile or 25%, I can approximate where about 25% would be and just go across. And that takes me right about here, which I could approximate to be about 130 maybe. And then if I wanted to find the 75th percentile, 0.75 right up here, again, I could do the same thing, just go straight across and see where it crosses. All right, right about here. So I could guess that to be about maybe 228. Again, I'm ballparking it because 225 to 250, that's a wide range, so I can approximate it. But I think it's cool that you can always find interquartile ranges here. You can find quartiles. It's cool that you can use this. You don't necessarily need a box plot. You can use cumulative frequency graphs. Next question is, what proportion of scores were over 200? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for 200 right here. Okay, that's right here. That takes me to about 70%. So if 70% of the scores are below 200, I would know that this accounts for the other 30%. So I could say 30% of scores are over 200. Just kind of cool. Again, I like using these. Now, the last question, we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but what does the flat portion mean between 200 and 225? So I'm going to identify it. Notice how I draw on these. If you're taking an AP Stats class and you end up taking the exam, they love seeing evidence that you're using the graph. So draw on it, circle it. This shows work. So I'm showing that flat part right here. What that's telling me is, let's see, I notice that 20% of my data lies between 75 and 125. Okay, so that means 20% of my scores were between 75 and 125. And then from 20 to about 40, let's see, I'm going to erase some of my markings here just so I can get a little bit clearer. From about here to here, okay, 20% of my scores are between 125 and 150. I know that, let's say, 10% of my scores, so I'm going from 40% to 50%. About 10% of my scores are between 150 and 175. And then from 175 to 200, I'm noticing a nice little spike here. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff. Noticing a nice little spike here. It's going up 2 blocks. It's 20%. And then nothing. What that means is 0%. Nothing's changed. I haven't accumulated any scores here. So there's no accumulation. I've accumulated 20% of my data here, 20% here, 10 here, 20 here, and then 0 here. So what does that tell me? There were no scores between 200 and 225. I can also say that about scores from 250 to 300. No one got that because you notice how it's flat. You notice how it's flat here from 0 to 75. That means no one got, or there are no scores from 0 to 75. So this is I love using these to interpret data. I think it's a good way to interpret it because you can come at it from a number of different directions, and I love this visual. So hopefully this helps you in your future when you're dealing with cumulative frequency graphs. You can always look to this, and hopefully this gives you some advice and some ways that you can use these to interpret data.